You walked into the wrong room once. You felt it. You stood there, surrounded by people who seemed to belong somewhere you didn't. And somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered, "These people have something you don't." That feeling was not weakness. That feeling was information. And today, I am going to give you the weapon that turns that feeling into power. My name doesn't matter right now. What matters is this. In the next few minutes, you are going to discover why most intelligent, talented, hardworking people spend their entire lives being overlooked. Why rooms full of opportunity consistently produce nothing for them. And more importantly, what the ones who leave those rooms with everything actually do differently. The aim of this video is simple, but dangerous. To strip away every comforting lie you have been told about success, influence, and human nature, and replace it with something far more useful.
The truth. So stay with me, because what I am about to share does not come from a motivational book or a business school. It comes from a man who observed power so ruthlessly, so accurately, that kings feared his ideas, and the church tried to bury them. His name was Niccolo Machiavelli, and he has been misunderstood for 5 centuries. Let us begin with something that will make you uncomfortable. Have you ever watched a person, not the smartest, not the most qualified, certainly not the most deserving, walk into a room full of powerful people and leave with everything? The deal, the introduction, the partnership, the opportunity you were circling for months. And you stood there thinking, how? I will tell you how. But first, you need to understand what a powerful person is actually experiencing the moment you walk toward them. They are not excited to meet you. They are not curious about your background. They are running a calculation. A ruthless, unconscious, instantaneous calculation.
What does this person's presence cost me? And what does it produce? That is it. That is the entire equation. Machiavelli wrote that men judge by the eye rather than by the hand, meaning people respond to what they perceive, not what is real, not what is fair, not what you deserve, what they see. And the moment you open your mouth trying to explain yourself, your struggles, your ambitions, your needs, the moment you perform your worth, they have already decided. You cost more than you produce. Not because it is true, because you gave them that impression before you gave them anything else. Now, here is something most people never talk about. There are 2 types of people who enter rooms where power lives. The first type arrives carrying a weight. Maybe they call it ambition. Maybe they call it desperation. Maybe they dress it up as passion. But it radiates off them like heat. This invisible signal that says, I need something from you. Powerful people smell that signal. They have been smelling it their entire careers. The second type arrives differently. They walk in observing. They are not scanning the room for who can help them. They are watching, listening, mapping the currents of who trusts whom, what tensions exist, what problems are going unsolved. And when they finally speak, they do not speak about themselves. They speak about something the powerful person has already been thinking about.
Machiavelli understood this at a level that made him dangerous. He spent years studying rulers, not to flatter them, but to understand them so completely that he could predict them, anticipate them, and position himself accordingly. That is observation used as leverage. Power is not looking for admirers. Power is looking for assets. Now, I want to ask you something directly. And I genuinely want you to think about this, not as a viewer, but as someone who has lived this. Think of the most important room you have ever walked into. A meeting, an interview, a dinner, a moment where you knew this is it. This is the moment that could change everything.
And ask yourself, honestly, did you walk in trying to be understood or trying to understand? Because here is what I believe. Most of us, almost all of us, have been trained from childhood to present ourselves, to explain ourselves, to justify our value out loud. School teaches it, families expect it, interviews demand it. And that training, which feels so natural, is the very thing destroying our influence the moment it matters most. Drop your answer in the comments below. I am asking sincerely, because the pattern of responses will reveal something extraordinary about how we all move through the world. Tell me, in your most important room, were you performing or were you present?
Let me tell you about Benjamin Franklin. This is not a story about genius. It is a story about patience, and something far more calculated than kindness. Franklin had a political enemy, a man of real influence who despised him openly. Most people in Franklin's position would have done one of two things. They would have avoided the man, or they would have worked desperately to charm him. Franklin did neither. He sent the man a letter asking to borrow a rare book from his personal library. Think about what that required. It required ego control at a level most people cannot access. It required the willingness to place himself beneath someone who openly disliked him, not out of weakness, but out of precision. The rival lent the book. Franklin returned it with a handwritten note of gratitude. And something shifted. Because the human mind cannot hold two contradictory truths at once. Once that man had helped Franklin, his mind quietly restructured the relationship. I helped him, therefore I must not despise him entirely. Therefore perhaps he has value. People do not invest in things they do not value, but they also begin to value things they invest in. Franklin understood this. He did not try to win the man's respect by proving his worth. He manufactured the conditions under which the man would assign it himself. That is not manipulation. That is the mastery of human nature.
There is something else that powerful people possess that is almost never discussed, and it is so simple it almost sounds false. They are comfortable being quiet. Not passive, not disinterested. Quiet. They do not fill every silence. They do not explain themselves when no explanation was requested. They do not volunteer their resume into conversations that never asked for it. This communicates something that cannot be faked easily. It communicates that they do not need your approval to feel whole. And that absence of need, that specific quality, is magnetic in a way that confidence seminars have never been able to bottle. Because everyone in a room full of powerful people is scanning for status signals. They are reading posture, timing, vocabulary, who speaks when, who waits, who laughs first, who laughs last. The person who speaks only when they have something worth saying
who listens with real attention instead of waiting for their turn to impress, that person does not look like a candidate. They look like a peer. And peers get treated differently than candidates.
Machiavelli wrote something that has haunted serious people for centuries. He wrote that the prince who relies entirely on fortune is lost the moment fortune changes. He meant something deeper than luck. He meant that everything built on impression, on being liked, on being seen as impressive, on the approval of others, is built on shifting ground. Because impressions change, moods change, priorities change. But usefulness is structural. When you become genuinely, specifically, irreplaceably useful to someone's actual problem, not their vanity, not their ego, but their problem, you are no longer subject to the volatility of their mood. You are woven into their world. That is a different category entirely.
So here is what all of this becomes when you compress it. Stop arriving as a person seeking attention. The world is full of people seeking attention, and powerful people are exhausted by them. Arrive as a person who has done the work of understanding what actually matters to the person across the table, and can speak to that, contribute to that, or make it better. Not because it is a tactic, but because it is a form of respect so rare that it reads as power. Observe more than you speak. Not forever, but first. Because the one who understands the room before they move in it will always outmaneuver the one who arrived needing to be seen. Invest in others without requiring immediate return.
Not weakness, strategy. What you give before you ask creates a gravity that asking alone never could. Control your need for approval so completely that its absence becomes your most visible quality. And then, when you do speak, when you do act, when you finally make your move, it lands differently. Because silence kept the weight. And weight is what gives words their power.
Machiavelli lived in a world of princes and exiles and betrayal. He lost almost everything. He was tortured. He was dismissed. He spent years writing in the margins of history while lesser men held power. And yet the ideas he recorded in obscurity outlasted every single one of the powerful men he served. Because he understood something they did not. The one who understands human nature truly, coldly, honestly understands it, never stays powerless forever. The world rarely rewards intentions. It rewards perceived value. You can spend your life arguing that this is unfair. Or you can become someone the world cannot afford to overlook. The choice, as it has always been, is entirely yours.